Hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk about Zero Trust architecture and how you can implement your own context awareness proxy. Before I dive into the topic, let me introduce myself. My name is Daniel Lubier and I work as a platform engineer at Moz. At Moz, we offer financial solutions to companies such as smart corporate cards, invoices, expenses, and reimbursements management. At Moz, we have been implementing CTA principles into our platform to improve our internal security and improve the user experience of our employees. The goal of this talk is to share our experience in implementing CTA and to help you to understand this popular security model. One key feature of CTA is that it's a perimeter-less security model. In a traditional network, a request is valid since it comes from a secure network. This is achieved by connecting to a VPN endpoint that once validates the request, it creates a point-to-point connection to the resource, and the resource considered legit as it comes from the same network. While in a CTA network, every request needs to be validated by the proxy. In conclusion, Zero Trust architecture is a powerful approach to security that can help organizations to mitigate common security risks while improving employee user experience. For example, removing the need of using VPNs, which often are causing bottlenecks. By implementing context awareness proxy, you can take the first step towards implementing CTA in your organization. So today I will be covering the following topics: definition of Zero Trust architecture, components of CTA, history and background, and its current state and implementation, and finally a demo implementing a simple context-aware proxy. Zero Trust architecture is a security model and it's based on the concept of never trust, always verify. So, what does it mean? It means that it outlines a set of policies and rules that you should follow when designing your organization internal security policies. One of these policies can be done by your provider, vendor, or custom implementation. There are three elements that make up this model: authentication, authorization, and context awareness. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of the user who is trying to access the resource, also known as the principal. This is commonly done through a login form where the user provides their username and password, and sometimes a second factor authentication code. In Zero Trust architecture, authorization is the process of assigning a set of roles or permission to a user or device, and it's not limited to one-to-one relation with the user, but can be also considered other factors such as the device which is used for the connection or the location from which the connection is originated, for example, to ensure compliance with regulations such as GDPR. The principle of less privilege should always be kept in mind while implementing authorization. Context awareness. Context awareness is the crucial component of CTA as it continuously monitors the user's environment and the behavior to ensure that the authentication authorization elements are satisfied. This element differentiates from CTA from traditional network security models. For instance, in traditional networks, users are often granted access to internal resources simply by being connected to the VPN, which assumes the user is trustworthy. In contrast, CTA enforces policies that require users to meet certain other conditions, like the device which is being used to connect, the time of the day, or the location, as I explained it before. I'll explore the components of Zero Trust architecture in more detail, including these three components in the demo. Before we get to the demo, let me give you some background on how we got to Zero Trust architecture. While the term might be seem relatively new, it has been around for quite some time. Google's Vision Corp was one of the earliest implementations of this security model and was developed in response to the Operation Aurora back in 2009. This attack affected some of the biggest corporations in the US and was carried out by the foreign government. I highly recommend you to check the Hacking Google series in YouTube to learn more about these uses and to learn some of the common pattern used by attacker. In addition, I recommend you to also to read about the Operation Aurora. Many organizations are still vulnerable to attacks because they either don't implement CTA policies or rely solely on network perimeters for security. Recent attacks, such as the one of Uber, demonstrate this. Keeping all of an organization's secrets secure and revoking access from all of the system can also be challenging. For example, have you ever found in a Edge server the public SSH key of an ex-employee or ex-contractor, or an unrevocated VPN certificate? These are common security concerns in traditional network security models. However, with CTA, these issues are not a problem, as every request is constantly evaluated by the proxy. The market offers a variety of CTA implementation, and vendors seem to be competing to offer the best solution and gain market share. To explore the different options and understand the best use implementation, I recommend checking out this open source, well-maintained list of vendors at zerotrustnetworkaccess.info. For instance, if you are using GCP, the Identity-Aware Proxy with Beyond Corp is an effortless tool to deploy for protecting internal sites. If you are deploying cross-cloud, check Cloudflare. Personally, I tried Pomerium, which appears to be an easygoing open source solution. Remember that you can always start small and scale up over the time. If you are running a home server and use a VPN to remotely access your home network, you can experiment with some of the solutions mentioned here or begin configuring single sign-on to your Prometheus instance, accessible to the. So for the demo, I have prepared my local Kubernetes cluster, and then I have installed Ingress and GX on top of it. And I have considered four different scenarios. The first scenario uses Ingress, which is configured as a public. So this is a very simple Ingress configuration where the request goes to Ingress and then it's forwarded to the server. For the second scenario, it's a very similar setup, but we are going to be hitting the private, but instead of be hitting the ingress, I'm gonna do just a port forward to the service. So the request is gonna come through from the same network segment as the echo server. For the third scenario, I will be using an identity-aware proxy. Identity-aware proxy is gonna be this scenario is gonna be using a special annotation in Ingress and GX, which is asking before forwarding the request to the service, is asking to a external auth server, which is going to be auth proxy, to validate the identity against GitHub. And if the identity is correct, it will forward the return and see that the request is valid, and then it's going to let it go through. And Context-Aware-Proxy is a very similar setup as the previous one, but I added an element called a microservice called auth-chainer, and auth-chainer is going to call auth proxy to get the fetch the identity, and once it fetches the identity, it's going to go to a second service called web authn. This second service is to provide a validation if the actual device which is used for this particular connection is valid or not. So we don't only provide access because the person is the person which it says to be, is also using the device that it says that is validated. Through the demo, you are going to see this code. This is the configuration for the public ingress, and here you will see the configuration for the private ingress. I'm going to be changing these lines, this annotation here, just in order to configure the identity-aware proxy or the context-aware proxy. This is the code for the echo server, and this is the command that I'm also going to be running to create the port forward. And as I don't have a FIDO2 key physical, I'm going to be using an emulator for this. So let me go through the demo. For the first scenario, I will be just hitting the public IP, from hello user and anonymous. Then for the second one, I'm going to be hitting the VPN scenario. As I'm not connecting to the port forward, I didn't enable the port forward. It's going to be not working. Let me just run this. And now it's working as expected. And then we have the third scenario, which is the identity-aware proxy. So if I click on private, how I'm not authenticated yet with GitHub, I will be asking me to sign in. Then it's going to ask me for my user, my password. Now I need to validate myself in my second two-factor authentication app. Approve the request, and I get. Now it say hello user, and it's also fetching my own identity. So it's already know that is me. And for the third scenario, I'm going to be enabled. We will use part of the identity, but in addition, we are going to be also validating that if the device which is being used for the request is valid or not. At the moment, it's not valid. So if I refresh, no, because I didn't update the ingress. But now, yes. If not, if I refresh, it's gonna give me the page of the without because this device is not authenticated yet. If I click on login, it's unable to login because I didn't add the device. So I'm gonna add the device right now. Click on register. First, let me go to if this is correct. I click on register, and this little pop-up says here to register this specific device or this specific browser. I type, I type yes. This return this and this, and you copy the of credential and save. And then it's gonna update the configuration. It's gonna take a few seconds because they have to restart the without end service. So now if I click on login and my username is behavioural, login, it's asking me again for my keys. I accept it. Login is successful. So if I return to my private page here, it's gonna be working. So with this for the scenario, we are demonstrating also like a context-aware proxy. So I hope that you have enjoyed. I have listed a couple of links or resources where I think they are interesting to read. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for attending to this conference. And if you have any question, I'm gonna be available in Slack. Bye bye.